Hello everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I'm Angelia and today I'm here with a slightly late Friday Reads. I got back from my trip Tuesday night. Wednesday morning I managed to film a video, but then we were busy. We were having good times, family times. My daughter was here with her cat for a few days and we were celebrating the end of a very challenging semester for her, and she triumphed through some difficult classes in her biology major, especially organic chemistry 2, which was her nemesis all semester, but she survived and triumphed. So we were very happy for her. She's gone back to work and do young people stuff with her friends for a little while, and then she'll be back again closer to Christmas, but we had a good time for a few days. But now I want to talk about the weekend reading, the weekend viewing, and all of the stuff and getting caught up. First of all, let me present for your admiration this thrifted masterpiece of Christmas tidings. This is a incredibly hot vest with embroidered stars, ribbons, and Westie dogs all over it. But it is like 80 degrees yet again here in the coastal bend, and so now that I have enjoyed wearing this for the video, poof, voila. All right, so in viewing, so we finally got back to what we've been watching for a while, which is Black Spot and Ted Lasso. We're still enjoying Ted Lasso. Black Spot has one episode left, and I just know it's going to be one of those Netflix deals where it does not solve everything, and then we're left hanging for all eternity because the show is not renewed. I feel it coming, and we'll watch that episode tomorrow because tonight we're going to the play, the Christmas Carol play that's the community theater. So I'm looking forward to that as well, and I'll let you know how that turned out in my next video. Let's see. Also, when Emma Grace was here, we watched the holiday editions of the British Bake Off. One of them was like returning, people from previous seasons. And so we knew a couple of them, and then a couple of them were from earlier seasons that we had not seen. But that was fun. And then the other one was from a TV show, kind of like when Stephen and I watched the one that had the actors from Dairy Girls. This one had actors from a show called It's a Sin, which I have not seen. I think it's on HBO here, so I don't have that channel. But that one was good too. Even though I'm not familiar with the show, the actors were funny and they had a good time, and I recommend those shows if you like the Bake Off. Okay, so let's delay the book talk even further by playing the Christmas card game. So this is where I pull one of these random conversation cards out and attempt to answer the question, and I invite you to answer it also in the comments if you wish. And today's question is, what's the best thing that's happened to you since last Christmas? Well, the best thing that happened to me since last Christmas was retiring, which happened at Christmas last year, because it's been a lovely year of retirement. Kind of combined with that was finding our happy home here in Corpus Christi, because we kind of we moved down to the coast, and the first house that we bought wasn't quite the right fit, and then we got into the right house in the right area. So it's been a kind of in one way it's been sort of a tumultuous year of changes, but I would say the retirement is the best thing because it was time. Even though it was an early retirement, it was time to get out of the public schools. And I will not go on a big soapbox rant about some of the crazy stuff that's happening in that regard, but I loved being a school librarian. I loved the kids. I loved sharing books, but I didn't love almost anything that had to do with some of the adults and the things that they did to make the job way harder than it needed to be. So that's my answer. What's the best thing that happened to you since last Christmas? Let me know. Okay. Moving on to this week in reading. The first book, and really, okay, these books are books that were not previously discussed in my TBR. One of them I talked about in the Christmas video I did the other day. The other ones, I have never talked about these books before because they were not on my planned reading list, but for various reasons, this is what I ended up reading this week. And I have no regrets. All right, so the first one is a book that I went out and bought right before my trip because I looked around and I didn't have exactly what I wanted, which, that's kind of hard to believe considering how many books are in here. But what I needed for this trip was a book that had adequate length for some long flights, and it had to be yet not too heavy in weight because I was bringing some Christmas gifts with me that were taking up some weight in my bags. And I needed it to be engaging, but yet not depressing. That was like the main qualification because this was a trip that had kind of a challenging aspect. But so I needed a book with an uplifting affect. So, uh, what from my TBR list in my journal of books that I wanted to read eventually, I selected one that I thought would fit the bill based on what I've heard people say about it. And I went to the bookstore and it was there. So I read The Secret Life of Albert Entwhistle. And I really liked this book. This book was the perfect book for what I needed this week. And this is a book about Albert. Albert is approaching 65. He's a postal worker in the UK in a small town. And he is a very closed in, closed off, in the closet guy. When Albert was a teenager, he fell in love with George, a boy at school, and they had a wonderful romance, but it had a bad ending. And we gradually find out what exactly happened to make them part. And after that time, Albert buried himself in his work and kind of just closed off from the world. He never came out of the closet. He devoted years and years to caring for an ill mother who, this is kind of a trope now, like the parent who is ill and lingers on for years and is kind of like negative and toxic all the time. So he had one of those, and then eventually she passed, but he still lives in that house, and he just goes through these same daily routines, and he kind of avoids interactions beyond a very superficial level. He's very introverted, and he just has not fully lived. So when he receives a letter, which it turns out to be one of those accidental Christmas books, because the whole beginning part of the book is in the Christmas season, but he received a letter from the employer saying that there's mandatory retirement at 65, which is coming up in just several weeks. This is not good news to Albert, and he suffers another unhappy blow at his home that I won't spoil. But anyway, so there's a sad beginning to the book where he's suddenly aware that he's going to be very alone and adrift. And rather than bury down deeper and just be a weird old recluse, Albert decides that he wants to make a change. He wants to turn outward instead of inward, and he starts to tentatively reach out and come out to people in his small circle. And he is pleasantly surprised at the reception that he gets, both with his coming out news and just becoming a more interactive person. So it is the story of Albert coming all the way out as a gay man and as a person in the community, and making friends and connections and trying to make up for lost time. And the underlying plot is that he decides that he wants to seek out and find George that he hasn't seen in like 50 years, and find out what happened to George and whether or not there's any possibility of a second chance for their romance. So that is, I had to work really hard not to peek ahead and see if he finds George, because I'm a bad at like kind of just taking a little peek. But I disciplined myself to not peek and just enjoy the journey of Albert, just sort of blossoming and making friends, and his personality coming out. And it was really quite delightful. So that was The Secret Life of Albert Entwhistle, which I recommend for when you need a happier kind of book. There was a couple of times in the book where I was almost like, this is almost too good to be true. And then I thought, well, it's a fiction. Of course, it's not true, but it's okay for things to be a little happier. I've read plenty of books where I thought, this is worse than what could ever happen to one person. So why not a book where things turn out better than you thought could happen for one person? So I did enjoy The Secret Life of Albert Entwhistle. Then I was suddenly out of reading material, and I had a long journey to come back. But luckily, my mother has millions and millions and millions of books. She has books upon books. She has books behind books in the bookcases. She has so many books. So I went book shopping in her bookcases and I did pick up a few things. And the one that I read on the way home was Brat Farrar by Josephine Tay. This was the first book I've ever read by this author. I was aware of her, and it was somebody that I thought I'd like to try at some point. And my mom has a really extensive collection of those 20th century classic mystery authors. She has lots of Agatha Christie, Dorothy Sayers, Rex Stout, Niall Marsh, Josephine Tay, just P.D. James, all those kind of people. And then she's got some more contemporary things interspersed in there. So I saw some books by Josephine Tay, or maybe it's T, I'm not really sure. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try one of these. And I just picked out the one that sounded the most interesting. And this really was good. Brat Farrar is the name of a character in this book. And Brat is a guy who grew up in an orphanage. He's been kind of a rolling stone. He's lived in a lot of places in Europe and in the United States, and he likes to work with horses. And I don't know anything about horses, so some of the stuff about the horse training and the horse competitions kind of went over my head, but I get the gist that he loves horses and he's good with horses. So Brat just happens to be kind of passing through a town, and this guy spots him who mistakes him for Simon Ashby. And this guy, Nick, who sees him, is an old family friend. And he says, oh my gosh, you look so much like him. You need to come have lunch with me. I need to talk to you. And he tells Brat that he looks just like this guy, Simon, and that Simon had a twin brother who disappeared when they were 13. And he left a note, which appeared to be a suicide note. And his coat was like by this cliff, and then later on a body was found that was like it'd been in the water too long to be identifiable. But so everyone believes that Patrick committed suicide when he was 13. This would be right after their parents died in a plane crash, and their Aunt B took in the family. Yes, Aunt B. And so the family is Simon, and then Eleanor is a sister a little bit younger than Simon. And then there's two younger girls who are also twins, identical twins. And so Patrick was the missing twin. And this guy that tells him about it is sort of an opportunist. He's a down on his luck actor. And he suggests to Brat, you should go and claim that you are Patrick, that you didn't die, you ran away, and now you've come back because you're going to come into a fortune. You're technically the oldest because you're the older twin, and you will inherit the fortune that is just coming around in a few weeks because Simon's 21st birthday is on the horizon. Brat resists this idea at first because it just sounds too far-fetched and, morally troubling. But when he hears about that they have their business is horses and that they have all these beautiful horses and they compete horses, he gets super intrigued and he decides to sort of play along and just kind of see what happens. So that's the setup. And the story is about, first it's about will he be accepted as Patrick into the family, and then some of the different reactions that he gets, because it gets twisty and really interesting and turns into a kind of a psychological suspense book. And it was very good. It was very enjoyable. So I will read another book by her in the near future because it really was good. It wasn't like a super cozy mystery where there's like a dead body in the drawing room or something. It was more, it had more layers than that. It was good. So it was a kind of a happy discovery. And then the last thing that I read was last night I read the 3 stories by Kate Atkinson in this book, Festive Spirits. And I did talk about this the other day. It is a book that she wrote for a charity called Sight Savers that is a British charity dedicated to helping people with vision difficulties that are unable to afford services. And so she wrote these 3 short stories. And they were okay. I was a little disappointed because I thought maybe they would be like these just really little jewels, but really each of them was okay, and each one of them seemed really short. Like I thought every single one of them I wanted more. Like I thought I'd rather have one of these and it be like a novella, because they were longer than sudden fiction, but they were just so brief that I was like, what, like there was like, they all seemed like they had a build up, a beginning, and then kind of a neat ending, but it seemed like there was room in the middle for more. So none of them like hit me in the feels or anything. So, nah, it's cute. I tried. It wasn't great. All right, so the other thing I did when I was on that trip was I did borrow a few other books. So I happened to mention in passing, we kind of did a little bookshelf tour around the house, which was fun. And I said, we saw some Agatha Christie books, and I said, well, the one that I've been wanting to read is The Mysterious Affair at Styles. And so I did borrow this, and sometime during last year I read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and in the discussion group for that, because I read it for a book club, several people recommended The Mysterious Affair at Styles, and so now it's here, and I will read it sometime soon and then try to get it back to her. I also borrowed Wilkie Collins' A Rogue's Life with these beautiful French flaps, very high quality paperback. I couldn't believe that he wrote a book that was slim. I did not know he had that in him. And it's about a guy who, I don't know, he sounds kind of lazy. He not industrious by nature, Frank finds working life something of a challenge, and by his 25th birthday, he has failed at medicine, portrait painting, caricaturing, and even forgery. Disenchanted with life, he despairs of ever finding something to commit to until he meets Alicia Dulcifer and her inexplicably wealthy family. So that sounds like fun. Like if I don't get around to it in the near future, it would be a good one for Victober next year. This one I don't know. Sometimes I'm a sucker for these kind of books, and sometimes they're just not very good. And I thought this would be another one possibly for when I have another time when I need a book that's just on the lighter side, but then I looked up reviews of it which were positive but said that it was actually sad. So if anybody read this, you can tell me. It's called The Bookshop of the Brokenhearted by Robert Hillman, and it is set in Australia in 1968. And I think it has to do with people who have traumatic pasts from World War II. Something about a bookstore. I will give it a chance. And then the last one, I did not borrow this book. I reclaimed this book. This is my book, and I found it on her bookshelf. Bells on Their Toes, which is the sequel to Cheaper by the Dozen. One day when I was fiddle-faddling with my books, I noticed that I have Cheaper by the Dozen. I was like, what happened to Bells on Their Toes? I had a copy of that. And I was like, what? Did it fall apart? Why don't I have it anymore? Well, it's because my mother borrowed it from me, and then she just shelved it with her stuff. And it was kind of hard to get it away from her. She's like, oh, wait a minute. I think I feel like reading that again. I'm like, well, not right now, because I'm taking it home and I'm going to read it again. But I'll probably just get her, because she doesn't have the other one. I told her I would get her own copies of both of the books as a gift sometime soon. And that satisfied her for the time being. So this was just a recoup of my own book. Okay. That's it. That's what I read this week. I do not know. I am going to pick a book out today to start, and I cannot tell you what it will be. I'm going to look through my cart and reacquaint myself with what I had on deck and choose one, and you will have to wait and find out what it turned out to be. What have you been reading this week? What's been the best, the worst, whatever? Let me know in the comments. And also, if you want to answer the question about the best thing that happened since last Christmas. I hope something wonderful did happen for you. All right, that's it for now. I think I will do a tag. I haven't decided which one. So until then, have a great weekend and I will see you soon. Bye bye.